As you have probably noticed, the anterior part of the skull is formed mainly by the frontal bone, and the inner surface of the frontal bone forms the anterior cranial fossa, which lodges the frontal lobes and cerebral hemispheres. In the midline here is a shallow groove for the superior sagittal sinus that ends anteriorly in the frontal crest, the point of attachment of the dura mater, with the foramen cecum below. If open, the foramen transmits the nasal emissary vein from the nose to the superior sagittal sinus. Along this vein, the infections of the nose and nearby areas can spread out to the meninges and brain. The orbital parts of the frontal bone, as well as cribriform plate, which we have here in the middle, they are extremely thin, and fractures of the anterior cranial fossa are quite common. They take 85% of all skull base fractures. And just below them, we have the orbits and nasal cavity. Due to such close relationships, fractures of the anterior cranial fossa cause the periorbital ecchymosis known as raccoon eyes sign. The small perforations in the cribriform plate allow not only the passage for the olfactory nerves from the nasal cavity, but also for the leak of cerebrospinal fluid as a result of traumatic tearing of the dura mater attached to the frontal crest. Sometimes it happens spontaneously. The occipital bone makes the occiput and most of the posterior cranial fossa. This fossa houses the occipital lobes of the cerebrum and hemispheres of the cerebellum, providing 4 fossae for them. The fractures of the posterior cranial fossa are not so common and are difficult to diagnose upon admission. Because the fossa communicates widely with the vertebral canal, the spinal puncture can confirm the traumatic damage here. You would simply obtain the blood with the cerebrospinal fluid. As an early sign, the hematoma may occur just behind the ear in the area of localization of mastoid emissary foramen. The mastoid emissary foramen transmits a mastoid emissary vein to the sigmoid sinus and a small branch of the occipital artery to the dura mater. The bruising of the mastoid process caused by traumatic rupture of these vessels is an indication of the basilar fracture known as Battle's sign. Next is the middle cranial fossa, made by the temporal pyramid and sphenoid. The pyramid of the temporal bone is the strongest piece of bone in our body. From here is its second name, the Petrous pyramid, which means it's as dense as a stone. An application of a significant force is required to break it, as in severe car and motorbike accident. The pyramid separates the middle cranial fossa from the posterior one, and both fossae may be involved in fracture. Additionally, it accommodates the inner, middle, and external ear. That's why fractures of the middle cranial fossa frequently feature external bleeding from the ear. If the tympanic membrane is intact, blood may accumulate inside the tympanic cavity. The condition is known as hematympanum.